Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Progressively Yours Health and Wellness Podcast. We have a wonderful show for you this evening, and I'm going to be totally transparent. I am just moving back to Georgia, and we were expecting the movers at 12 this afternoon, and they just walked in the door. So I am going to be in and out, but I'm still excited about the show because we have a wonderful guest this evening. I'm Dr. Imani Ma'at, and I've got my co-host.
I'm J. Bernard Kynes Sr., and I join in with our host, Dr. Imani, in welcoming you to another wonderful episode of our show.
So why don't you do what you do? We like to start the show with a kind of spiritual, kind of getting us to relax and take a deep breath and just really prepare for the show in the correct way. So Bernard is so good at that, and I'm going to defer to him to do that.
Thank you, Dr. Imani. I'd like for those of you who have joined us to, wherever you're sitting, to put your feet flat on the floor and check your posture. We would do some deep breathing, and I will share words briefly from a prayer that inspired me, and I love it, and I want to share it with you. So first, I want you to, if you so desire, to close your eyes and just allow yourself to relax wherever you're sitting. 3 deep breaths in and out through your nose. Let your exhalation be longer than your inhalation. Close your eyes. First, listen to the chime of the gong bowl. Breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. The breath is symbolic of the spirit of the eternal. It gives us life. Without breath, we do not live, we do not exist. So the breath represents our inner spirit. We pause as we welcome the ancestors. I just returned from Ghana, and now when I refer to the ancestors, it has taken on a more significant and deeper meaning for me. And therefore, we do not begin our show without paying homage. We do not worship our ancestors, but we do pay homage to the journey and to the legacy for which they've laid down. And therefore, I like to offer these words. Keep breathing with your eyes closed. These words say, Dear God in heaven, you have your mysteries. You made us to be flawed. In our flaws, we see our possibilities. In our flaws, we see your mercy, your wisdom. We see who we want to be and who we can be. We thank you for the opportunities to discover ourselves through our mistakes. We are humble in your presence, grateful, Almighty. Ashe. Namaste.
Namaste. Namaste.
And amen.
Amen. Give credit. Where did that from?
These words were taken from the man who fell from earth to earth, not from earth. And just a beautiful prayer that one of the elders in the film offered to the Almighty. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You want to add anything?
No, I sometimes at this point I share some of my poetry or an affirmation from a calendar that I did some years ago, a calendar of daily affirmations. But I'm in moving mode and I don't have my things right in front of me, so I'm going to skip that tonight. And like I said, we have an amazing guest. We always have amazing guests, but we're really excited about introducing Becky. I'm going to let Bernard introduce her because he's known her longer than I have. That's the only reason. Otherwise, I would want to introduce her.
Yes. All right. Well, I'm so excited to have this opportunity to introduce Becky. I've known her for at least 7, 8, maybe 9 years. We have become very good friends over this time period. And so we're honored to have her. So let me just kind of do a formal introduction of her, and we will get in further on into the show. Becky Arrington is a success strategist, clinical, alchemical hypnotherapist, and a certified hypnosis instructor through the National Guild of Hypnosis. Her highly developed intuitive and visionary insight as a psychic channel positions her perfectly to help her clients look deeper to see the blockages at work within their business or personal lives. Her transformation strategies differ from other standard training and mindset technologies and coaching because it commingles the client's untapped wisdom with a new technique she uses, which allows the client to clear massive amounts of blocks, either from childhood, prior experiences, or past lives in a very short period of time. And the results are sustainable. Becky is also co-owner of the Well of Roswell, a holistic healing and event center. So, without further ado, and with great honor and sense of humility, I introduce and present to you my friend, someone who has worked with me, so I know these strategies work, and has helped me tremendously along the way. Becky, we're so happy that you have joined us. We look forward to you sharing with our listening audience. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you.
Oh, thank you both. Imani, welcome back to Atlanta. And I can't wait till you get totally settled. And Bernard, it's wonderful to see you too. I was thinking earlier, I have no idea how long it's been, but I don't know if it's been 10, certainly 8 years that we've been friends. So thank you all for bringing me in tonight. I've been keeping up with your show, and I just feel very honored to be able to share with you.
Well, thank you. We're happy to have you.
So, we know that you do a lot, Becky, and we wanted to know a little bit about hypnotherapy and the work that you do as an alchemical hypnotherapist. What is all of that, and what do you do? Please tell our audience.
It's magic. It's absolute magic. So first of all, alchemy, when used, it is the term when you turn metal into gold. And so the way that we use it here is that we turn trauma and we turn emotions into positive experiences. A lot of hypnotherapists, well, first of all, let me just qualify here. This is not look into my eyes or a stage show hypnotherapy. I work very deeply in terms of emotions. Some people do come let's say for stop smoking or eating disorders, those type of things. But my real wheelhouse is in helping people process emotions, past trauma, in particular, childhood issues. And the alchemical process is a little bit different in the fact that it's like refilming a movie. It gives you an opportunity to go back into a situation, take a look at it logically, and then from that adult perspective, and then gives you an opportunity to rerun it and change it, like you're changing the ending. And the reason that that helps, and I'll tell you a minute when we talk about the brain of why that works. We find that going back in and reliving in a safe environment, let me put it that way. I use a lot of techniques. Sometimes it might be looking through in the session, somebody looking through an iPad, or getting above a situation, or projecting something on a movie screen, because the number one thing is for the client to always feel extremely safe. It is a very interactive process. A lot of hypnotherapists are the ones talking, and there's a lot of suggestion. I do suggestion, but so much of this is what's within you. Because the thing to remember is that all the wisdom lives within you. We have the ability to heal ourselves. We basically know everything. It's just hidden. And so I'm kind of the person that I go in and help you unlock some of those hidden places to be able to look at them, rerun them, change them, and move on and have a happier life.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a very good definition. And Becky, can you also share with the audience, how did this work, this call, this gift that you offer back to the community? How did it discover you? How did you get to this space and place in your life?
Well, I was in corporate for many, many years, and I was a vice president of sales, and I worked for a graphics firm, that we did all the graphics for interior design for big box retailers. And in 2008, if you remember, it was a pretty big crash in terms of big boxes, and I got not laid off at that point, but kind of demoted. So I went back into sales, and then eventually the spirit, the universe plucked me out of there and said, no, that's not what you're supposed to do. So I was at a real loss for a long period of time. And my guides, which I actually am a channel, so I get a lot of information, they said to me, go read. And so I went to Phoenix and Dragon at the time, and I became a reader, and it really honed my skills. But I knew that there was so much more that I wanted. And on Facebook one day, remember the old Facebook, they used to have a running list of all the conversations of people up in the right-hand corner. I saw a conversation, and it was talking about inner child healing, working with guides, clearing away emotional blocks. And I stopped. I said, I've got to find out what that was. And I actually knew the person who was doing the teaching. And so I took training, and eventually then opened up my own practice. And I've been in business since I opened that in 2015. So it's been a nice commingling of my corporate part of it. I bring a lot of sensibility and down to earth. But then I have the woo-woo aspect as far as bringing in a lot of the spiritual. So I like to feel like I'm pretty left brain, right brained.
Say a little bit more about three words I want to highlight that you just lifted up. And as you talked about this transition that I heard from corporate to what you're not doing as an alchemist, hypnotherapist, guides, blocks, and emotional.
Okay.
Expand on each of those terms for the layperson who's interested in knowing more about themselves, but just on those three terms alone.
So guides, blocks, and emotions. Am I correct? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right.
Let's talk about guides first. This is kind of an esoteric process. You can call them guides. You could call them spirit guides, angels, whatever. It's that belief that something greater than yourself, a force, is assisting you, tracking with you in your daily life. I was not a person from a let's say psychic or spiritual standpoint. This all came to me in my 40s, and I was going through a divorce, and suddenly I started hearing voices, and it was like, who is this? What is this? And I finally figured out that I was opening, it's called opening to channel. And so have the ability to hear information from an outside source. Now, let me qualify that. When you open, suddenly there's all sorts of people, people who used to live on this planet. I remember there was an Irishman that was always trying to come in. And I realized that is not the information I wanted. And so in my reading and talking with some people, I determined at that point that I only wanted to talk with guidance from the 7th level and above. So we're at the 3rd dimension, moving into the 4th dimension. 4th dimension and 5th is where you would go, let's say, once you've passed on. So 7th level, that's your angelic ascended masters. It's a much higher hierarchy of information. And so they give me a lot of information, and everybody has one. You may not be in touch. Sometimes it's almost as though we have opportunities where they give us a little, a clue, a hint. As an example, I remember many years ago, I went and my car needed a choke. Well, at the time I was smoking, and it's kind of like that waking dream. And it just dawned on me of, oh, okay, I'm choking. And so those that can show up, a lot of people have animal guides, spirit guides. And so that animal will oftentimes come to them. So that's kind of a world that informs ours, whether or not you're conscious of it or not. And I do believe that not everybody believes as I do, but in my experiences, I have gotten tremendous assistance and guidance from that grouping of guides that I work with. Blocks. We each have within us something sometimes that will stop us from moving forwards. You could call it self-sabotage. It's something that keeps you from really being successful. And sometimes in our heads, we have a whole host of personalities. You may have a judge. You may have a critic. You may have a project manager that keeps you on task. These are kind of the voices in your head that inform some of the decisions that you're making. And oftentimes in that group, it could be that you've got someone who's really stopping you from moving forwards. And so those are those blocks. It's an emotional block. It could come from the voices in your head. It can come from past experiences, trauma. And a lot of them seem to occur in childhood. So, and what was the last one? I'm sorry, I'm talking so much, Bernard. Was it emotions?
Yeah, the last one was emotions. And but before we go to emotions, I just want to pick up on what you said about voices that show up in our heads. You know, people are their own. I often hear statements that I'm my own worst
enemy. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that kind of what you are?
Oh, very much. Yes, very much so. And sometimes I do a process, I call it table talk. And it's where I sit down with a client and we talk about who's in your head. And we ask them, and it's usually we have something that they're trying to get past. And we identify all of those different people. We put them at a conference table and we go through and poll them. Are they for or against? And it's shocking how, even though your you're conscious, the person who's doing it, a lot of insight, a lot of information comes up, and suddenly they realize, oh, I've been sabotaging myself because I've been afraid to move forwards. Or sometimes the critic is so strong, I'll talk to the critic and said, we've got a new plan. Give us 30 days. Stand down for 30 days. Become the critical thinker instead of the critic. And that oftentimes gives someone a chance to at least have a breath, try to do something new without all this motion and the inner voices talking with them.
Yeah, thank you for that clarity, because people often are stuck in those voices and so critical of themselves that they are unable to move forward in the direction that they want to go, be it relationally, be it professionally, in their professional lives. And so these voices can be very, very inhibiting in a person's success.
And also, Bernard, we don't always know what the voices are. As an example, I had a client one time, and she had these three emotions or three characters that came up, and it was shame, blame, and guilt. And she called them the three cousins. And whenever she would start to do something, they'd start talking, and they'd tear her down, and they'd tell her, just awful things, that they'd shame her, they'd blame her, and they'd make her feel guilty. Well, in our process, we recognized in talking with those the three cousins, that what they were doing was trying to stop her. She was an extremely impetuous person, and they couldn't get her to slow down. And so they would start chattering at her, and then she kind of stopped. So once she understood that, it helped her slow down and think through things instead of just reacting. So ultimately, I think they all have a purpose, but oftentimes it's multifaceted, and they can do a variety of jobs.
Thank you.
One of the things that raised for me, Becky, is that sometimes we're not sure if the voice is a good voice or a bad voice. It's like,
Sure.
I get a thought, I need to do such and such. And, then you get the counter says, no, you don't, I want you to turn left. You're like, no, but I always go right. It's like, I told you, you need to go left right now. Like, if you're driving.
Sure.
So how do you differentiate between the good voice and the bad voice?
Well, I think your first gut reaction is usually, if it feels counterintuitive to you, it probably is. When I teach a course, it's called Opening to Channel, where we're getting in touch with guides. If a guide tells you to do something that is very emphatic, you must do this. If it's something that in your heart, it just doesn't seem right, then it's probably a false guide, or it's false information, because your guides or your subconscious, it's going to be very trusting of you and give you choices. For instance, even in hypnotherapy, your subconscious will not let you get into something or unveil something that you're not ready to do. It's very protective. And so a lot of people come in and it's like, I don't think I want to do that because I'm afraid I'm going to find out something that I don't want to. But your mind, your subconscious will kind of put the brakes on it. So my suggestion, Imani, would be just, what's it feel like? Put it into your body. Does it feel, or it could be, maybe I should look at this and then stop and take, stock on what happens, or what the end result would be if you go left or if you go right.
I'll tell you just a quick story. I have raised big dogs for a long time, and my house it's on 3 wooded acres in Stone Mountain, and my property it connects with, it touches a local middle school around the corner from here, and so one time 2 of my big dogs were missing. I mean, they were missing for hours, and in fact overnight. And the next morning,
Wow.
I was supposed to go and pick up a friend and take her somewhere. And this voice said, "The dogs are at the middle school. Go and pick them up." And I was like, I mean, it was so clear. And so I turned and I went down the street, had to go around the corner. And before I got to the middle school, there's a church. And I said, well, maybe I should check at the church. The voice was so loud. It did not say the church. I said the middle school. Keep going. And I was like, and I got there and I didn't see them. The voice said, roll down the window and call their names.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Coco, say cool. And I see these two black heads pop up out the grass. I'm like, I mean, it led me right to them. And it still gives me chills because it was so clear.
It was so clear. Yeah.
I had no choice but to listen in that
Yeah.
particular instance, so it really does help when you listen. Right.
So a big part of that then is, is it spirit guides? Is it your intuition? Or is it a combination kind of both? The other thing to remember is that as we are moving into an expansion of consciousness now in what's going on in the world, is that you're going to become more and more intuitive. You're going to seem to know. And it's you can take courses, you can try it yourself, you can certainly, but a lot of it's intention. And just know that bit by bit, you're going to have some things unveiled to you. And this is all something that everybody's starting to awaken, and everybody will begin to experience some of those great ahas as they discover things and listen to the inner voices.
Mm-hmm.
Can you say a little bit more, Becky, about the term subconscious for the layperson who may be listening and they notice it's a clinical term? But say a little bit more from your experience in definition of subconscious so they get a better feel for what you're describing.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, let me speak to your conscious mind. The conscious mind makes up 10% of your brain. It is your short-term memory. It's your willpower. It's your rational. It's your analytical. It's that conscious type of thing that you're aware of. Your subconscious, actually the subconscious rules the body. The subconscious is the one that tells your body to breathe, with all your bodily functions. The subconscious is where all of your memories lie. Your subconscious is where your experiences, your traumas, everything is in there. And the sole purpose, when something, let's say you've had a trauma or you've had an experience as a child, it lives in a little place in the subconscious. And the subconscious's job is only to lock it down. That's all it cares about. Lock it down. It doesn't have the wherewithal to determine, is it good for you, bad for you? If it's in that area, the purpose is to lock it down. And so there are very few modalities that actually give you access into that subconscious. EMDR is one. Hypnotherapy is another. Sometimes you can reach it in a meditative state. But it's where you are bypassing the conscious mind and you're getting deeper. And in order to do that, that's where we're able then to go in and excavate, if you will, to find out what's in there and what does your subconscious want you to take a look at. And once we're in, then you have the opportunity, as I mentioned before, to run and change and to really get in there and make some changes. What's interesting about the run and change process is that once you do that, it overlays the original experience. So you've got, let's say you have a trauma. We go through a process where we rerun it, we change the ending, or we get you a new mom or a new dad or whatever it is that we're doing in the session. That new experience overlays on the original one. And then the subconscious starts to lock that down. Now, with a habit, with anything else, it takes some time. It also takes a conscious effort for you to continue to, let's say, not go back to some of the same patterns. But that's the job of the subconscious. It also has the ability to heal you. And so a lot of people, we've been trained so much in Western medicine to seek outside ourselves, when in reality, so much of the information and the ability to heal ourselves, it lies within, and that's working in tandem with the subconscious. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect sense. Perfect sense. And thank you, in particular, for mentioning the elements of trauma and how trauma is involved.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, Becky, I want to take a risk and ask you to talk a little bit about past life regression. I mean, a lot of people hear that term. They have no idea what it really means. What does it mean to regress back to, early
An
life
earlier time.
before you were here, or when you were in
Right.
the womb, before you were in the womb? So what does that mean, and how does it serve people to go through a past life regression experience?
Well, first of all, I have a couple of little rules that I go by. If someone comes and they are wanting a past life regression, my rule is that it has to relate to something that they're trying to figure out in this life, because we've had thousands of lives. And if I just take you on a regression, we could be anywhere, and it doesn't necessarily serve you in bringing it back to this life. So a past life regression is where, through a hypnotic state, we go back. Let's say there's a particular issue. I'd like to take a look. Let me just give you an example. That's probably the easiest way. There's a woman who was trying to leave her husband, but she just couldn't. And so we went back, and in the protocols asked that her subconscious go back to an earlier time when a pact or a situation came that has direct relationship and relevancy to what's happening in this lifetime. And in doing that, we went back. It was an earlier, I don't know, probably 1800s or even before. And her husband, in actuality, in that scene, was her son. And he had wandered off, and he fell into the river, and he drowned. And at that point, she said, if I ever get a chance again, I will never let him go. Well, our words have tremendous power, and that set up a contract, if you will. We know about karma and some of the things that happen. And so what we did in that is that we talked with that younger self, that earlier lifetime woman, and she made the decision that she recognized what had happened, that it wasn't her fault, and that from this point forward, she would allow her husband free will, and that basically we broke that contract is what we did. And karma oftentimes puts us in situations where we have contracts with other people. Many times our contracts happen with the closest people who are with us, and everybody kind of decides how to play a role. Oftentimes when people come with, say, trauma from childhood, we take a look back and we recognize that the mother had, her contract was to be overly controlling until the daughter was able to stand on her own and find her own power and break out of that. Once that happens, then the mother no longer needs to play that role. So contracts and the past life, it's an exploration to understand what happened in that life and how does it relate to now. It's fascinating. As I said, we've had thousands and thousands of lives, but sometimes we get into a situation where we need to take a look at the contract. And in looking at the contract, we recognize that it hasn't been completed. And so we ask, that's when oftentimes I'll bring in the person's guides and we'll say, what needs to happen? We want a time frame, and we want some specific acts for them to do in order to complete that contract. But it's, I like, again, past life regressions, just to be able to get an idea of how it relates to an issue in this lifetime.
Thanks, Becky. That was really clear. I mean, I guess, like you said, you could be all over the place if it's not really directed at a specific thing that they're trying to figure out or work out in this lifetime. I think.
Well, and usually when somebody comes, let's say you've got an issue, I will always begin in this lifetime, because I want to clear out and figure out what's going on here. Once we've gone through that and we recognize, well, we still got some issues. Maybe it's deeper. Maybe you came in with this, and it's something that happened in a past life that needs to be looked at.
So Becky, would you help with eliminating some myths about, one, therapy, and two, about hypnosis? You know, people may watch on television and they see a form of hypnosis that,
like, Get Out, like you must Get Out.
Yeah, right.
It's really a bad thing.
Yeah, so make the distinction between what people see in the media and what really happens, and kind of, if you would, assure them, because people are afraid of, to some degree, of therapy, of whatever form it may be. But say something about, how the safety and the space that's needed to help heal what you are sharing with them, and why this is important for overall health and wellness. This is what our show is about at Progressively Yours, Health and Wellness. How does it contribute to the overall health and wellness, and this kind of dismantle some of these myths that make it the negative elements of it?
Well, first of all, I think therapy is wonderful, and everyone should take a turn, because it can be so enlightening and so illuminating to really take a look at things. Bernard, you have recommended people for me. I get a lot of referrals from therapists, from talk therapists, let's say. And my work is almost like it's a jab. It's a little explosion. Someone who may be stuck in their therapy can come, we'll go in, we'll go deep, we'll unearth some things, we'll do some healing work around it. And then I'm going to send them right back to you, where they have an opportunity to continue on that weekly basis of really working through things. As I mentioned before, your subconscious will not unveil anything unless you're ready. Remember, I was doing a workshop, and it was on sexual abuse. And there was someone in the class who knew that she had been abused as a child. And she tried and she tried, and she just wasn't quite ready to see it. She had fleeting memories, and eventually, several years later, it all kind of started to come for her. But at that particular time in her life, that information wasn't needed, or she didn't necessarily need to see that. Now, what was beautiful about it is that she had an awareness enough that something had happened, that she went on to, she started a 501(c)(3), started to do a lot of work with abuse and sexual assault victims. And so she channeled that, even though she couldn't get her own memory, she channeled it into something good. But again, your subconscious, it's just not going to come. It's not going to come at all. And I spend a lot of time, when somebody comes to me, I'll ask them what's going on. And we'll talk a lot. And what I look for, and that's part of what that little psychic intuition helps me with, is I'll hit on a couple of key notes Yep, it's abandonment, it's control, and it's I don't know. They knew they had a bad or worthiness, let's say, and that's what we go into. Where it goes from there, it's totally up to their subconscious. So my sessions are very interactive, and it's a very, very light trance. You know what's going on, you can hear me. And what happens is the mind starts to go back almost as though you're looking through a viewfinder, and you know those clicker things. And so you have a lot of things that are going through, a lot of scenes, and eventually then your subconscious will hit on one for you to take a look at. You can do your clearing, you can do your healing on that one. We don't have to go back through every single piece of your life. It becomes a emotion, or that becomes the symbol, and then it becomes almost retroactive in terms of the healing.
Do your sessions build on each other? In other words, if you've taken them one place in the kind of subconscious conscience, the next time you see them, if they want to explore that some more, do you go a little deeper? Or
we can. It just depends. I never know. And that's what I love about it. You know, you take somebody under, and I have no idea where it's going. Fortunately, I have enough training to know what happens once you're there and some of the things that you do. But it's quite exciting because you have no idea what they're going to land on, or where it will go. But yes, it's absolutely what also happens in that first session. We had talked. I made mention that sometimes I get people new parents. Because they land back in their childhood, and they recognize, and you may have a wonderful relationship with your mother, let's say now, but that child didn't. Mother was preoccupied. There were too many children in the house, or she had, her mind was somewhere else. You as the adult, you connect with the inner child, and you become the advocate. And we oftentimes find out what's going on with mother. The mother may need healing. The mother may need a lot of things. And I ask, is this the mother you need at this particular time? And many times that is not the case. And so we go and make a list of what are the attributes that you need, that this child needs for a mother. And we go then through a meditative state in search of another mother. And it basically, the mind, the subconscious creates one. It's extremely, it's a beautiful experience. They feel very supported. We then bring that mother, the new mother, which it's an avatar. It's an archetype. We bring that mother back to the original scene that we opened with, and we rerun it with the new mother. Well, guess what? The new mother, she loves the child. She's not going to yell at them. She's going to play with them and do all the things. And I swear I had done a tremendous amount of inner child work. I mean, years of therapy. And I always felt that there was something missing. I could never quite close that loop. And so, gosh, when I took my training, I don't know, 60 years old, let's say, and I got new parents, and I felt fabulous. I felt supported. Now, are they real? No, but they're archetypes because it lives within you. So, you can get a new husband, you can get an inner mate, you can get new dad, mom, all sorts of things.
Powerful.
I'm sorry.
Your movers.
Movers in the house. Movers in the house. So Becky, share a little bit about trauma and how traumas can resurface or leak out if the healing that you just made reference to is not tended to. Many people think that traumas gets repressed in the subconscious,
right?
And they go on with their lives, and they think that those experiences are not impacting who they are today.
Right.
Why is it important for the total health, not just mental health, but for physical health and emotional health, to find the strength, the courage, the love of self to deal with those experiences that might leak out?
Well, Bernard, I'm sure you find this many times with people in your practice. Someone will come in and you may ask something and they said, "Oh, I dealt with that. I'm good. I'm good. That was in the past." But what happens, and it happens especially, I would say 40 on, oftentimes people become extremely emotional. They can start to cry a lot. They have unrepressed, or they have, unidentified anger. There's just a lot of emotions, and they can't necessarily pinpoint it to anything that's happening in their life. And what has happened is it just is pushed down and pushed down and pushed down to a point that and there's a spiritual element to that also, that in your awakening, in that process of you moving on and getting better and being that total healthy person, that those things need to be dealt with. And so they show up in ways that are almost, you can't ignore. I mean, if you're yelling at your boss or crying in by the water cooler at work and you can't necessarily identify it, that's kind of a tap on the shoulder that's almost from spirit that says, "Hey, you need to deal with this. You need to deal with this." And trauma is, and I'm not even saying, yes, a lot of the work that I do, a lot of the work that you do, we rerun and we can help do coping mechanisms and help heal some of that trauma. But trauma, I think, especially in the society today, is so rampant and so prevalent that most people are kind of walking around with some PTSD from something.
Yeah, especially given what we've gone through over the past 2.5, 3 years with the COVID and how it has resurfaced in ways that people are not aware of. And the point that you made earlier, that the energetic forces are shifting and the guides are moving in us, where we're becoming more aware of ourselves, is a result of how the trauma in the society has kind of just stirred this energy in us, would you say?
Right. Oh, absolutely. Now, COVID in many ways was wonderful in the fact that it slowed people down enough, those who were sheltering at home, that they had some time. And it was a looking at what's important, what really matters in my life. My health matters, my family matters, all this extraneous stuff doesn't. So I think that that's one of the great things that happened with COVID. But you're correct in the fact that we are expanding, and it's all of those things are kind of coming to a point where we are, I think we're going to see more and more people awaken. But what I've noticed more than anything else with COVID is that there is a tremendous amount of, and I hate to say PTSD again, but there's trauma, especially from people. I see it with a lot of young mothers, people in, let's say 40s, 45, 50, who are there with their kids day in, day out, homeschooling, etc. And I think the other thing that's happened is that people just have not had a break. We've had one thing after another, and if it's not COVID, then it's the trauma from COVID, or it's trying to figure out where you're going to work and how you're going to do it, and your kid. There's just so much that, and politically, and
a lot of loss too. A lot of people.
A lot of loss. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and we won't even add at this point how the political landscape and all of the dramas that has played out over the past few years have contributed to the PTSD that you're describing. Becky, we're getting short on time. Could you discuss a little about the Roswell and
The well.
well of Roswell and its offering and practitioners and events about your work and
Sure.
with the audience?
Yeah, thanks. So I am a co-owner. My business partner is Donna Fertel. She shared an office with me, and we were looking for bigger space, and we found this beautiful space in Roswell. It's about 2,500 square feet. We have 5 practitioner offices, and I have about 10 to 12 people who work out of there, all sorts of different modalities. Please go to our website at thewellofroswell.com and look under practitioners, and you'll see it's such a rich group of healers, and there's some psychologists and massage therapists and all sorts of wellness oriented people. What we try to do there is to become a hub to build community, for education, for healing. We have a large event space where I rent that out, and then we have it's for classes. There's yoga in there. We're just started. We have sound journeys every month where someone comes in and plays the bowls. I have someone in October who is going to be doing a past life regression sound therapy. I'm starting this weekend a gentleman who is a world-renowned world musician, who is going to be doing Indian flute and voice lessons. And so it's,
Wow.
I won't say that I'll rent to anybody, but it's an interesting mix. And there's a lot of events, and of course nobody can go to all of them, except I sometimes have to. But it's turned into just a really good community for us. And that's our process, is that we want to be able to be there for people and meet them where they are. If they're in an awakening standpoint, then we hope to give them classes and some guidance as to how they can expand their horizons with that and get better.
I know that we have people listening from all over the country, and we have a young lady, Anicia, who was one of our guests in the past, and she was interested in how she could connect. Do you all do work virtually? And
Yes.
Reach out. Can you work with people in California, even though you're here in
Yes, I do. I do virtual appointments, and we are in process with a lot of our classes. They are hybrids. They're both in person, and we broadcast them. So we're expanding that more and more.
Okay. Yeah, I'm
So
interested.
yes,
I'm interested in the past life sound I think you said you're having someone doing past life.
Yeah, it's October. It's October 1st. It's a Sunday afternoon.
I'll be there.
Okay.
That sounds wonderful.
But yeah, so on our website, again, thewellofroswell.com, please sign up for the newsletter, because it lists a lot of things that are happening. You can see the practitioners, and you can also go to the event calendar and see what is upcoming.
Mm-hmm. Okay, wonderful. And what time is it? Wow, time goes so fast, and we're having fun. We could talk to you for another 2 hours, I'm sure, and not get bored at all.
Thank you.
So, and I'm sorry I had to step out once or twice, but I've learned a lot in the time that I was able to be on. Just wanted to, and we'll let you have some parting words. I just wanted to make sure people tune in, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Progressively Yours Health and Wellness Podcast, as well as the Facebook page and the LinkedIn page, and share. And you can listen to the replay, rebroadcast anytime that you want to. We have a new card, and it's called the Sankofa card, that has Bernard and mine, and offerings both together and individually. So it's a great card. It's called sankofacard.com. So people can find all of what we do there, including the podcast. And so again, we'd like to thank you, Becky. Any last comments or words?
No, I just am so appreciative, you guys. I've been a big fan of your podcasts, and I knew it was in the working, and so that's always exciting to see things actually come to fruition. Again, I welcome you back to Atlanta.
Thank you so much.
My only shameless plug is on September 22nd at the Well of Roswell at 7:00 at night. I am doing another public channeling. I think you guys came to mind that we did for the solstice, and we're doing this one for the equinox, and it gives us an opportunity. I give a lot of individual information with people asking questions. So
say the date again, September
22nd.
Okay. All right.
And it's I'm not even sure what it's called. I think it's equinox channeling.
Okay. All right.
But thanks, you guys. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I think you want to mention the show next week.
I can't remember the title off the top of my head, but yesterday we were hosting a show for Dr. Candy Dugas, who will be our featured guest next week, and we had pretty much similar conversation about mental health, spiritual health, and caring for our holistic selves. And we will continue that conversation with her on next Tuesday.
Yes. Thanks again, Becky, and thanks to our support staff, Janet. Thanks so much for filling in for Toya. You did a great job.
Toya made it in. Thank you, Toya. Always
and Mike
outstanding.
I think Mike was also in the background somewhere.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike and Janet, and we love you guys. Thank you so much. Becky, we will be in touch. Thank you again. Have a wonderful evening. Wonderful, a wonderful always, because who knows when you're going to listen to this if you don't see it when we're live.
Thank you, everybody. We look forward to seeing you next week. We appreciate your support, and we love you.
Peace and blessings.
It is indeed for the ancestors. Ashe.
Ashe.